All right, I think we're live. Hello, friends. I'm Brian Church. This is the Jickoby Plays channel with a Jickoby Live segment. Testing out my setup here, lights, camera, audio, stuff like that, to make sure everything's going to come through well before I do any more live sessions. This is just going to be really fast. We're going to talk about the Kobold Press Adventure calendar, what their current offer is, and we'll also talk for a second, or I guess I'll talk for a second because I doubt anybody's going to be tuned in, but I'll talk for a second about the latest hubbub around Hasbro making a comment that Wizards, or not Wizards of the Coast specifically, but D&D specifically is under monetized, and what I think that means, and what I feel about some of the reaction that I've seen around the internets. So first up, let's talk about the Kobold Press Adventure Calendar. In the video description, I'll have a link to the Kobold Press Adventure Calendar where you can go pick up the latest current deal is the Warlock Layer 8 Lost Temple of Anax Apogeion. It's a free PDF that they're offering, at least as of this recording, for the next 10 hours and some change. You can also get a pretty sweet deal on the Tomb of Mercy, 50% off the softcover or $3 off the PDF. So let's take a quick look at Lost Temple of Apogeion. I don't know if that's even the right pronunciation, but I'm sticking with it because that's what I'm going to do. So let's hop over to here. Hey, how about that? These are some sweet production values here at Jickoby Live. Lost Temple of Anax Apogeion. It's for third level characters, and it's written by Mike Shea. So if you're not familiar with that name, Mike Shea, he is Sly Flourish. He's the creator of the Lazy DM series, which is a really fantastic set of books and workbooks that are aimed at dungeon masters, helping them spend the right amount of time preparing the right amount of material for a session of role-playing game, so that you're not spending 6 hours preparing a bunch of content for a 2-hour game and end up not using 90% of what you prepared because the players in your campaign threw a monkey wrench in your plans. So this is a 7-page PDF, and it's basically a discovery of a temple of an old god, a great old one. And I won't go into too much detail. The PDF's free. Go download it. It's 7 pages. On my scanning through the content, it's easy to plunk this into any campaign setting, whether it's a homebrew or in any campaign world that you might be running in. You can take this, you can throw it in as a one-shot, you can make it part of your campaign, you can have your characters maybe pick up this quest in a town at an inn, or maybe just as they're traveling from point A to point B. There are several adventure hooks that you can use to get your characters or your players, your table, I suppose, started with this adventure. So lately I've been seeing a bunch of chatter on the YouTubes and such about Wizards of the Coast, or not even Wizards of the Coast, but Hasbro, making a statement that D&D is under monetized, and people's reaction to what that means, what they think that means, and there's a lot of chatter that suddenly people are like, oh, Hasbro, the evil corporation, is after your wallet, and they're going to start adding all of these nasty microtransactions and whatever else. Hasbro is a corporation. They are beholden to their shareholders to generate revenue for the company. And shareholders want to see that the corporation is making their best effort to generate as much revenue as possible because that means the shareholders' share increases, or the value of their shares increase. So, of course, Hasbro, in a shareholders meeting, is going to tell their shareholders, here's this area where we see that we can make some improvement. The monetization strategy that it seems like they're going to be going for are primarily around digital assets, which means they're probably going to be charging for different types of memberships to D&D Beyond, or to tools that are associated with D&D Beyond, or add-ons to D&D Beyond, things like that. To me, that's what it seems like. I could be wrong. Of course, this is all speculation until they roll out their plan for how they're actually going to add these monetization strategies. I don't think it's a bad thing, provided the content that they're charging for is valuable. If they start charging for things that are currently free, I'm not terribly interested in that. So I probably would not sign up for any sort of membership if I didn't feel like I'm getting value out of it, basically. And I hope Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro are smart enough to understand that. I assume they are. But based on some of the content that Wizards of the Coast has been putting out in their print books lately, I'm not terribly interested in paying for any digital assets that they might be putting out. I think Wizards of the Coast, their latest, I don't even know how many books they have put out recently that I've passed on because they're not terribly interesting. I purchased a couple of items. What was it? I'm trying to even remember the titles of the books, and they were all so lackluster and snoozy that I decided I'm gonna wait until a couple of people review these books before I go purchasing them. I didn't buy the Spelljammer material because I kind of had a suspicion that it wasn't going to be great. I didn't buy the Dragonlance material, again, because I thought this is probably not going to be great. So I skipped it. And if Wizards of the Coast is going to be, charging some sort of membership fees for content in that same vein that just isn't interesting, isn't worth it, then of course people aren't going to buy it. They're not going to continue to support that kind of nonsense. There's also speculation around like, oh, we're going to have to start paying to play this game, which I don't think is true. Because, for one thing, rule sets already exist. 5th edition D&D already exists. You might have your Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, and Monster Manual. You have those assets. You have pen and paper. You have dice. You can go play this content. There are many, many years worth. I think we're pretty close to coming up on 50 years of D&D, something like that. There's tons of content available. Old material. In fact, I'm going to be going through an exercise of converting some old material, not to D&D, but to Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Go use that. Don't get shoehorned into this idea that you can only play content like the latest release from Wizards of the Coast, because that's foolish. This is a game of imagination. Use your imagination. Take things that already exist and bring it into your game. So on that note, I don't think that it's necessarily bad that Hasbro has said that D&D is under monetized. I think it's fair for them to recognize that there are other ways that they can be making money. And I hope what it means is that Wizards of the Coast is going to create more content and better content. If they are creating better content and charging a reasonable fee for it, more people will buy it. And then that will encourage them to continue in that same vein. That said, Wizards of the Coast is not the only content creator for role-playing games. Kobold Press, we just looked at their website. We just looked at a free adventure that they're putting out as part of their adventure calendar offerings. Kobold Press is amazing. Everything that I've purchased from Kobold Press, I have thoroughly enjoyed. There are creative people making content available for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, and it's not just Wizards of the Coast. So look outside of Wizards of the Coast. Find other content creators. DM's Guild. I haven't spent a lot of time there, but I hear great things about some of the content creators there. Paizo. They are the folks who drive the Pathfinder rule set. Classic Pathfinder. Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Fantastic games. In fact, the old TSR Wizards of the Coast material that I'm going to be porting over from old 2nd Edition content that I grew up with, I'm going to be porting it over to Pathfinder 2nd Edition and run some games there. See how it goes. So I'm going to be using Forgotten Realms setting, but I'm using the Pathfinder second edition rule set. So remember, just because like it has the D&D ampersand, like that doesn't make it anything great. You can take any of that D&D content. You can take content from other game systems and apply the mechanics of 5th edition D&D or apply the mechanics of some other game system to any of these things. I like the idea of taking the fluff of a setting and the basic plot line of an adventure, put that into a different game mechanic, and see how it goes. I think there's a lot of room for people to do that, and it frustrates me a little bit when I see people overreacting to ideas of like, Wizards of the Coast ruined Dragonlance setting because it's not the Dragonlance setting that I grew up with. That's fine. The Dragonlance setting that you grew up with is still available. You can still play it. Go buy the PDFs from DriveThruRPG. They're there. They still exist. Use that content. Don't get shoehorned into thinking only the latest stuff from Wizards of the Coast is sort of the only thing that you can use. So that's it. Like I said at the top of this stream, I just really wanted to test out my setup here, make sure that my audio was going to be good enough, make sure that my video is good enough and lighting and things like that, make sure that the conditions here are good enough to do some other live recordings. So hopefully when I go back and watch this, hopefully everything looks and sounds good. If not, then I'll pull this video down and no one will ever know that it existed. So, thanks folks. Until we meet again, keep rolling.